46 minutes, so. Am I good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The apocalypse is nigh. While researching my original topic, which was nanotechnology, I came across an interesting term. The term was gray goo. Now, even more interesting than the term is what it describes. It describes an apocalyptic scenario where self-replicating biovirus nanorobots destroy all life on the planet. By the end of this speech, my audience will have a basic understanding of nanotech and the process and likelihood of this type of scenario taking place. In 1959, Richard Feynman, physicist, described what's considered the first theoretical concept of nanotechnology. He described taking the smallest tool set available to man and using that tool set to create an even smaller tool set. And then using that smaller tool set to create a smaller tool set, and so on until you had a small enough tool set with which you could manipulate molecules and atoms. Now, this is before the term nanotechnology even came into play. Basic definition of nanotechnology is controlling matter at the atomic and molecular level in order to create materials and devices of that size. Nanorobots are, while not physically possible yet, there's a lot of research leading towards the development of such devices. Nanorobots, in order to qualify for that name, need to be at least 100 nanometers in size or less. Now, that's about the size of a single HIV virus. One of the conceptualized purposes of a nanorobot is to create nanorobots specifically for the purpose of making more nanorobots, because developing that first nanorobot is going to be a very complex and difficult process. But then that nanorobot, created and programmed to reproduce itself, would then easily be able to create copies of itself. In 1986, Eric Drexler, who was a pioneer in the field of nanotechnology, in his book Engines of Creation, described for the first time, theoretically, the possibility of an out-of-control, self-replicating nanorobot. And there are three components to that. One, carbon is the most functional material for creating materials at this size, at the size of the nanoscale. So these conceptualized nanorobots would be built out of carbon. And you take one rogue, self-replicating nanorobot without any kind of limiting factors or built-in expiration date. And point three, the most abundant source of carbon in the world is the biosphere, which is all living things. So what you've got is a rogue, self-replicating nanorobot that uses carbon in its environment to recreate itself. And Drexler proposed what he considered a reasonable amount of time for this single robot to replicate itself, and that's 1,000 seconds. And that's 16 minutes and 40 seconds. So after 16 minutes and 40 seconds, you've got 2 self-replicators. After another 16 odd minutes, you've got 4, and so on. After 10 generations, which is approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes, you've got 512. After another period of that same time, so a total of about 5.5 hours, you've got 68 billion. Now, what this describes is an exponential growth curve. So after 10 hours, you're at 68 billion. It's taken you 10 hours to get to a total population of 68 billion, starting with a population of 1. The thing to consider is that 1,000 seconds after 10 hours, you've got another 68 billion. It doubles every 1,000 seconds. After just under a day, these minuscule, microscopic, molecular-sized robots would weigh close to a ton. After just under 2 days, with an unlimited, infinite supply of carbon, they would outweigh the Earth. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen because there's not enough carbon on the Earth for you to reproduce the weight of the Earth itself. So that's a pretty scary concept. I mean, how depressing is that for the Earth to end by being destroyed by simple little nanorobots which are just doing what they're programmed to do, which is recreate themselves. No alien invasion from outer space, no zombie apocalypse, just essentially being picked apart piece by piece by these tiny little microscopic pieces of dust. Now, two things to consider here are the if these things actually exist and mitigating factors. Quoting Robert A. Friedis Jr. of the Lifeboat Foundation Scientific Advisory Board, biovorous nanorobots capable of comprehensive ecophagy, that's the word for where they eat all life, will not be easy to build, and their design will require exquisite attention to numerous complex scientific specifications and operational challenges. Such biovores can emerge only after a lengthy period of purposeful, focused effort or as a result of deliberate experimentation. So what he's basically saying is that you're not going to arrive at these self-replicating biovorous nanorobots by accident. And even if you did, Friedis studied, Drexler's specifications were just general theoretical exponential reproduction. Friedis considered, how much of availability with carbon in the biosphere that, once you have your ground zero, at ground zero, all the carbon's going to be used up. So the nanorobots on the fringe would have more access, more available carbon than the ones at ground zero. So that's going to slow things down. He estimated, taking Drexler's numbers, a more reasonable estimation that it would take 30 days for the biosphere to be completely destroyed by these nanorobots. So, and the other thing to consider, even though it would take 30 days, is the if. Currently, with that much complexity going to the research of these things, in 1992, Drexler released a paper where he basically, while warning against, the theoretical possibility of the dangers of nanotechnology, stated that there's no need to create self-replicating biovorous nanorobots in order to have all the benefits of nanotechnology. And he created a scenario where nanorobots could create other nanorobots in more of a assembly line kind of function. So these so even if self-replicators are created, also they can be made to have self-limiting code, or where they can only produce so many copies of themselves, or some sort of expiration date, some sort of time limit where they, after 2 generations they cease to be self-replicators. And Friedis of the Lifeboat Foundation considered a more likely scenario of the dangers of nanotechnology to be significantly less drastic, where they were created to be military weapons, where you create biovorous nanorobots that are non-self-replicating. Created in a lab, you create millions of the biovorous robots and use them as sort of like a non-biological biological weapon. While still dangerous, would not replicate out of control. So these biovorous monstrosities don't exist in labs somewhere. Don't expect the world to end tomorrow. At least not from our little nanobots. As long as our governments and corporations listen with caution to our scientists, and sufficient regulation is in place, we can go forth boldly into the nano world without fear that self-replicating biovorous nanobot assemblers will end it all. Thank you. And here's my audience. Thank you.